I'm Veronica Dudo. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, news from the top.
On day 10 of Operation Epic Fury, we are winning.
When the administration says the operations in Iran will stop. Stuck overseas, we talked to a teacher at a U.S. Catholic school whose students were stuck overseas when the war in Iran started. Plus, critical care.
If they're poor and they knock on our door, we must help them.
How Pope Leo is following in the footsteps of his predecessor by expanding a unique service at the Vatican. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast day of Saint Marie Eugenie de Jésus, founder of the Congregation of the Religious of the Assumption. Our top story tonight, President Donald Trump's Secretary of War tells reporters at the Pentagon the U.S. is winning Operation Epic Fury and that Iran is badly losing. Pete Hegseth also warned that today would be the most intense day yet of strikes against Iran. Meanwhile, the U.S. Joint Chiefs Chairman says Iran's missile and drone attacks have fallen since the war was launched. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Hey, Veronica, good evening to you. That's right, tonight in the war with Iran, both sides really digging in. Secretary Hegseth says it will not be endless, protracted, or mission creep, and he says President Trump will make the ultimate decision on when the objectives are met.
Video shows a U.S. Navy destroyer firing Tomahawk missiles at Iranian military targets. The Secretary of War offers this assessment of the battle.
As President Trump declared yesterday, we're crushing the enemy in an overwhelming display of technical skill and military force.
Also at the briefing, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who announced CENTCOM continues to make progress.
To date, they've struck more than 5,000 targets. U.S. Strategic Command bombers recently dropped dozens of 2,000-pound GPS penetrating weapons on deeply buried missile launchers across the southern flank.
But nearly 2 weeks into the battle, it remains unclear tonight how long this war will last.
From the beginning, from this podium, we haven't stated how long it will take. Our will is endless. Ultimately, the president gets to determine the end state of those objectives.
Hello, everyone.
But President Trump says it's all happening quickly.
We're ahead of our initial timeline by a lot. I would say that we probably would not have thought after a month we'd be here.
The president also says he's focused on keeping energy and oil flowing to the world. He posted, if Iran does anything that stops the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far.
I will not allow a terrorist regime to hold the world hostage and attempt to stop the globe's oil supply, and if Iran does anything to do that, they'll get hit at a much, much harder level.
An Iranian security official dismissed President Trump's threat, and Iran's military continues to say it will not allow a single liter of oil to leave the Persian Gulf.
Good afternoon, everyone.
At the White House press briefing today, Caroline Leavitt addressed reporters.
We know that the U.S. military and our brave warfighters are quickly and expeditiously executing these objectives well ahead of schedule, but ultimately the operations will end when the commander-in-chief determines the military objectives have been met, fully realized, and that Iran is in a position of complete and unconditional surrender, whether they say it or not.
And Veronica, we're learning tonight from the Pentagon that about 140 U.S. service members have been injured in this conflict with Iran to date. Most of those injuries, thankfully, are minor. Many of those troops have returned to the mission. Veronica?
Oh, and the rhetoric is certainly heating up in this conflict, including threats.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely, Veronica. And Iran has dismissed any notion of seeking a ceasefire, and one Iranian official going so far as speaking directly to President Trump himself through X, writing, quote, that President Trump, be careful not to get eliminated yourself, end quote. Veronica, I'll send it back to you.
Correspondent Owen Jensen reporting tonight from the White House. Thanks, Owen. Joining me now is retired Marine Colonel William Gunnar Dunn. Thank you so much for your time. You have characterized the current hostilities not as a sudden flare-up, but as the result of meticulous long-term preparation within the U.S. government. From your perspective, is Operation Epic Fury achieving its goals?
Hey, Veronica, thanks for having me. And yes, I think they are achieving their goals. This mission has been thoroughly planned. It's being thoroughly executed. The one thing that I hope we don't do, and the president has mentioned this many times, we do not want to stop until all objectives are met, and we must continue, basically punishing the enemy until all objectives are obtained.
Now, we've seen strikes on Iranian nuclear and military facilities. From your experience as a veteran Cobra pilot with dozens of combat missions in the Middle East, what makes missions against hardened or deeply buried targets in Iran especially difficult?
Well, you have to have a weapon that can penetrate the surface or whatever the obstacle is to get to the, basically the heart of the target. In some of these instances, it could be, many feet of hardened concrete. There are other ways. There are thermobaric systems that can do very precise things. But these 2,000-pound deep penetrators can do massive damage. And I think they will end up being very effective on the targets. Normally, an adversary is not going to make these protective systems so deep that they can't be penetrated by our technology.
Now, we've heard from President Trump and his administration that the U.S. wants to avoid an insurgency similar to Iraq or Afghanistan. In your opinion, what type of high-level planning is underway for the next step?
Well, the biggest thing we can't do is repeat our mistake that we did in Iraq. In Iraq, I was in Iraq during OAF-1 when we fired the government, we fired the military, and we fired the interim government as well. That helped cause and helped foment the insurgency for 10, 20 years across the entire country. We cannot make that same mistake twice. I believe we need to get rid of this bad regime, put it in a temporary government, if you will, and then allow the Iranian people the ability to choose their own government and become a friend to the United States and the region again, just like they used to be, back in the 70s.
Now, what message do you think people should be taking from American forces when they're looking at all of this military might that we've been seeing over the past week?
The two things. One, we can strike at the time and place of our choosing, anytime, anywhere. And two, when President Trump makes a statement and a commitment, he's going to follow through on it. And I think when they talk about Iran trying to block the straits and being hit 20 times harder, I would take that to heart and believe President Trump when he says that.
Colonel William Dunn, great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
In southern Lebanon, a Christian community is mourning after a Maronite priest was killed in an Israeli bombing. The Maronite Church is an Eastern Catholic church in full communion with Rome and has more than 1 million living in Lebanon. EWTN News' Romy Haber reports from Lebanon.
Christian villages in southern Lebanon have drawn wide attention in recent days. Praise for their resilience, as many residents chose to remain in their homes despite ongoing hostilities along the border. But on Monday, that resilience turned into tragedy. A Catholic parish priest was killed in an Israeli strike on the border village of Klaya in southern Lebanon. Father Pierre Rai had chosen to remain with his parishioners as tensions escalated. Local reports said Hezbollah militants had infiltrated the Christian town, turning it into a target for Israeli airstrikes. Residents reportedly alerted Father Rai, who went to confront the armed men and asked them to leave the village. The strike that killed him happened around the same time. In recent videos, Father Pierre Rai reaffirmed his determination to remain in Klaya, saying, "No matter what threats we face, we will not leave Klaya, we will stay." He had voiced that same resolve before. During an earlier round of fighting in 2024, he said, "We will not leave. We are projects of martyrdom, and we will not abandon our land." His death sparked strong reactions among Christian leaders in Lebanon. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja said Hezbollah fighters had entered the village, triggering Israeli strikes that ultimately led to Father Rai's death. Another priest from Klaya, Father Hanna Khouri, also appeared in a video circulated online, warning that unknown presence in the village should be seen as a threat to the community. Father Rai was not the only victim. Several residents were injured, and community pages in southern Lebanon had announced the death of a Christian farmer, Sami Yusuf al-Ghafari, from the nearby town of Al-Mashab. For many Christians in southern Lebanon, the tragedy reflects a painful reality. Despite efforts to remain outside the conflict, they continue to find themselves caught in a war they did not choose. Romy Haber for EWTN News.
Pope Leo has responded to the news about the death of a priest in southern Lebanon. The Holy See press office sent out a statement saying Pope Leo expresses his profound sorrow for all the victims of the bombings in the Middle East these past few days, for the many innocent people, including numerous children, and for those who were helping them, such as Father Pierre El Raya. Joining us now is Father Dan Carew, Regional Director of the Jesuit Refugee Service in the Middle East and North Africa. Father, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we heard the Holy Father express his sorrow for the victims of the war and, of course, the death of Father Pierre. Can you tell us what's the situation like right now down on the grounds as a whole?
Exactly. Here in Beirut, just a couple hours ago, there was an attack just in the southern suburbs. All day long, we've been hearing the drones going overhead, so that's become a regular practice for us. This is our reality. We've opened here in the shelter again, as we did in 2024, a shelter for migrant workers, all of whom were excluded from the public shelters. Those people are coming from the same places where Father Pierre Rai was killed yesterday. The Israelis have asked for a mass evacuation from all of southern Lebanon. Many of the Christians, in particular the poorest and some of the older Christians, made the decision to not leave southern Lebanon. Their fear was that if they did leave, that they would never be able to get their land back again, that it would be occupied by some group, whether it was Israeli, whether it was other local groups here. And so out of fear, a lot of them had decided to stay.
As you mentioned, you work with those who have been displaced. Can you share a little bit more on the perspective of what it's like for the people who have come to Lebanon who are now experiencing a secondary displacement?
So for 40 years, the Christians here have known this church to be a safe haven. And so when things go bad, they have for 40 or 50 years shown up on our doorstep. And as they've done before, they brought their Hindu, Buddhist, and Muslim brothers and sisters with them. And so that's what happened on early Monday morning when the war started again. As it had happened in 2024, they showed up on our doorstep, and unfortunately, we were ready and happy to welcome them. But it's a terrible circumstance. But this is the moment when the church lives its full mission, is able to be that refuge along the journey for people.
Incredible work that the church does, and of course your role in helping so many there. Father Dan Carew, thank you so much.
My pleasure. God bless.
Voters in Georgia's 14th Congressional District are heading to the polls today to fill a vacancy in the U.S. House of Representatives. The seat was vacated in January following the resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene. 12 Republicans, 3 Democrats, 1 Libertarian, and 1 Independent are listed. Key contenders include Republican Clayton Fuller, a former district attorney and Air National Guard officer, and Democrat Sean Harris, a retired Army brigadier general and cattle producer. Under Georgia's rules, if no single candidate captures more than 50% of the vote today, the top 2 finishers will head to a runoff election next month. One of President Trump's second-term priorities has been to arrest and deport illegal immigrants. In response, a dozen states and hundreds of jurisdictions have now put in place policies to obstruct law enforcement from taking them into custody. A Senate hearing looking deeper into sanctuary cities comes amid the DHS shutdown as the department faces backlash over its tactics. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us from that hearing. Eric, what's the latest on all of this?
Well, good evening, Veronica. Sanctuary cities have become a focal point for a national clash over immigration enforcement after fatal confrontations between ICE agents and civilians have taken place. And now the Trump administration wants billions more in enforcement spending. With that from the backdrop, committee chair Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said sanctuary cities must go.
Anybody refuses to cooperate with federal government in turning over people subject to deportation under federal law, they can be prosecuted.
Senator Graham has already introduced a bill that would impose criminal penalties on state and local officials who refuse to turn over illegal immigrants. Earlier this year, President Trump announced plans to strip federal funding from sanctuary cities and states. During the hearing, Republicans criticized Democrats' proposal requiring ICE agents to get judicial warrants to remove illegal migrants, saying it would take decades. Chad Wolf, former acting secretary of DHS during the first Trump administration, agrees.
Calls for ICE-free zones, detention bans, and even an outright abolishment of ICE are becoming increasingly common. The evidence is clear. To restore the rule of law, common sense, and public safety, the era of sanctuary jurisdictions need to come to an end permanently.
Democrats claim the Constitution is in their favor.
It's certainly a state right to refuse to have its local police commandeered to be assistant ICE agents. Assistants now to ICE operating as a secret police in the United States.
While their witness defended contributions of immigrants.
That immigrants are here to build, not destroy. A mountain, literally a mountain of research proves that immigrants and reasonable limits on participation with ICE do not increase crime rates.
The Democrats' witness also testified that the Trump administration's policy to get rid of the worst is a lie, saying that the Cato Institute's figures show that only 10% of those captured and deported were of the highest threat level, while 70% were deemed by DHS to be a non-threat. Republicans refuted those claims. By the way, the bishops here in the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops say that all people should be treated with dignity and advocate for, quote, meaningful immigration reform. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Travel nightmare. A group of Catholic high schoolers find themselves stranded in the Middle East, how they miraculously made it home. And we take a visit to the newly renovated health clinics hidden in the wings of St. Peter's Square. A group from a Catholic boys' school in Maryland has safely returned home after being stranded in the United Arab Emirates during strikes coming from Iran. A 2-hour layover for an international exchange trip to Thailand turned into a 4-day nightmare in Abu Dhabi. After canceled flights and the airport shutting down, the 18 seniors and 2 faculty members were able to make it home safe with the help of the U.S. State Department. And joining me now is Justin Myers, a teacher and college counselor at the Heights School who accompanied the students on the trip. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, if you could tell us, after landing in Abu Dhabi, when and how did you find out that missiles were being fired in the skies above you and the students?
Well, things were normal for a while. We were just waiting to board our next leg of our flight to Bangkok. And actually, one of my students came to me and said that he heard that the flights were being suspended. There was no announcement or anything. And so I kind of thought he was kidding. But I went to the desk, and the airline worker there did confirm that flights had been suspended. And then we went on our phones and saw how the tensions had escalated in the Middle East and everything that had happened, so we knew that that was very true.
Now, you've been doing this for close to 20 years. What happened once you realized that all the flights were canceled and you would essentially be stuck in the UAE for some time?
So, as often happens, airlines were giving out hotel vouchers, and I was trying to get hotel vouchers for our whole group. Initially, and it was very chaotic, and there was a lot of people trying to get all kinds of, there were thousands of people that were suddenly displaced. And so it was hard to get hotel vouchers. They were waiting for it to come up on the computer. I tried to tell the gentleman that we had a school group, that we had minors with us, and that in the chaos, that didn't seem to register. And so we initially ended up with 10 rooms for our group, but in 5 different hotels. And so I told him that that was not acceptable. And then finally, after talking to many people and after a couple of hours, they were fortunately able to get us vouchers for 10 rooms, all in the same hotel.
Did you hear or see any of the strikes or bombings while you were there?
Yes, yes. So the students were calling their parents, and actually one of the students was on the phone with his mother when we heard some explosions outside. I think it turned out that was probably far away, but it was loud enough to obviously, give us some pause, and it made the mother extra worried, unfortunately. So we were kind of gathered together away from the windows until we could work all of that out with the hotels.
So you're dealing with so much. You're also there for the students. Yes. How did your faith play a role in those uncertain moments?
Well, I mean, it was vital, obviously. I mean, I was doing a lot of praying. I was praying every day. We, as a group, we were saying a rosary every evening, just about before bed. I'm thankful to my other chaperone, Dan Shashinsky, for arranging all of that. And then I know we had lots of prayers from our school community, from everyone in our school community back home and on the other trips. They had heard and they were praying for us during this whole ordeal. And I certainly feel like every single one of those prayers was needed.
Wonderful. Well, glad everyone is home and safe. Justin Myers, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, move over celebs. A new poll crowns the Holy Father as America's favorite. Plus, Vatican clinics expand medical care and charity for Rome's homeless. Welcome back. An unexpected U.S. figure is currently leading the U.S. polls. Pope Leo XIV. A March NBC News survey of 1,000 voters were asked to rate how they felt about various public figures, and the results are surprising. 42% of respondents say they were positive about Pope Leo XIV, while respondents rated figures like Stephen Colbert, Marco Rubio, and President Trump a little less favorably. In comparison to other popes' positive ratings, Pope Francis peaked at 57% in 2013. Pope Benedict had 30% in 2013, and Pope St. John Paul II hit 65% in 1998. In the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica, one of the Vatican's most visible acts of charity happens quietly every day for society's often forgotten, the homeless. EWTN News Vatican correspondent Valentina Di Donato reports from Vatican City.
Underneath the Bernini colonnade here at Vatican City, there are showers and health clinics, famously made available to the homeless by Pope Francis. And many, ahead of the conclave months ago, were worried, especially the homeless. Will this continue under the new pontificate? Migrants, elderly, those living on the streets, some of Rome's most vulnerable people, gather in the shadow of St. Peter to receive showers, healthcare, and most important of all, human connection. Expanding on the legacy of his predecessor, Pope Leo XIV inaugurated the updated health clinic in November, introducing a radiology unit to quickly diagnose the most common illnesses affecting people living on the streets.
Every pope represents the logic of the gospel, and Pope Leo is doing the same. So we are going forward in the same way. He opened the second part of the health clinic under the colonnade. So you can see that the line is the same, but done differently.
Cardinal Krajewski, the papal almoner, is responsible for carrying out the Pope's charitable initiatives. Appointed by Pope Francis in 2013, he oversees the distribution of aid to the poor and marginalized locally and globally, even responding to disasters and war zones. He's carrying on the legacy of Pope Francis into the next papacy. Monsignor Imbena, who works in the Vatican's dicastery for the service of charity, says the mission depends entirely on donations and the sales of parchment papal blessings made accessible for anyone to purchase.
This is what they are doing, and everything is free of charge. And after shower here, they are given a breakfast, kind of breakfast or luncheon, and everything is coming from gift people are bringing.
While much of the funding comes from donations, sometimes money arrives in unexpected ways.
One time they called me from Castel Gandolfo and said there was a suitcase for Pope Francis. I opened it in my office. It was full of money, like in the Western movies, about 150,000 euros. I went to the Holy Father and told him I don't know where this came from, and he said the money is already clean. Maybe it was used badly before, but if someone leaves it for the poor, it restores dignity.
Paolo, who lives on the streets of Rome, says the service has become a lifeline for the past years.
When this clinic opened, so many people started coming here for treatment for different illnesses, even just for a shower.
Massimiliano Ralli, the director of the medical facilities of the Elemosineria Apostolica, tells EWTN News nearly 2,000 people are helped by the medical personnel every month.
So anyone that comes here that is poor, that asks for help, is actually helped in the best way we can. So we can help them with a medical visit, a general visit, a specialty visit, with an X-ray, for example, or physiotherapy, or an ultrasound, or lab tests. If they're poor and they knock on our door, we must help them.
And for the homeless of Rome, the message from the Vatican is clear. The Church's work of mercy will continue. In Vatican City, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.